studio. Nearly all UK universities are to face 18 days of strikes across February and March. That is according to the UCU. Now, as my old mate Charles Clarke, when he was president of the National Union of Students and was swayed to support as a Labour minister the idea of student fees, he said fees will make students more consumeristic in their thinking. They will be judging the quality of lectures, of tutorials, of libraries, of facilities, but of course they will have paid for it. First and foremost, it's got to be there for them to make that judgment. Many right now are objecting and want to take action over the withdrawal of those services, over the simple assertion that they will not be getting what they have paid for. Well, student group Claim are seeking compensation over disruption to their education during COVID and previous strikes. Solicitors are operating on a no-win, no-fee basis, arguing that the universities have breached contracts by failing to provide services. They've already sent letters of claim to 18 universities, with more than 60,000 students having joined in that claim. Joining me now to discuss it further is Shimon Goldwater, who is a solicitor with Asserson. They've, as I said in that lead-in, I mean, they clearly have paid for an expensive service which simply is not going to be available whilst so many in the teaching staff are on strike and not at work.
Yeah, that's right, Alastair. Thank you. So we're currently representing about 60,000 UK university students and international students who have been suffering now for years. I mean, this latest round of strikes is, I think, the third or fourth round in the last few years. And that's on top of all the disruption that students suffered during the pandemic. So the claims they are bringing to court, and the first hearing is in just 2 weeks' time, concern all of that disruption, which meant, as you said, that they paid for one thing and received something which was far less valuable. And that's what these claims are about.
What does that law actually say the rights of those students are, as we're watching, if people are listening to our conversation on television, a lecturer giving it plenty of that. But what are the rights under the law of those students?
So the claims are relatively simple. It is a simple breach of contract situation. So this is a case where students have paid tuition fees for services, lectures to be given in person, access to libraries and other campus facilities, and what they've been given during the pandemic and during strikes are poor quality substitutes. So teaching online only during the pandemic, closed libraries, during strike action, classes cancelled entirely. And when that happens, you're entitled to the difference between the value of what you paid for and the value of what you received, rather like someone who pays for a 5-star holiday and is told, you know, we're fully booked, we'll give you a room at a 2-star hotel down the road. They'd expect to receive the difference in price between those two holidays. It's no different here with these students.
Pretty simple stuff. Absolutely fascinating. Shimon, thank you very much indeed for sharing it with us, with all the authority that you bring to it as a solicitor with Asserson's. And thank you very much indeed for your time this Sunday. That is Shimon Goldwater, solicitor, as I said, with Asserson's, who's working on this campaign as well. I'm delighted to say that joining me now also is Reem Ibrahim, who is a political commentator in his own right, and more importantly in the context of this conversation, is a university student. So you've joined in the claim. Now, that in my days as a student leader with Charles Clarke and people like that, we very often used to feel that student accommodation wasn't up to muster and we go on rent strike. We wouldn't pay the money. Your problem in this context is you paid for the lectures, you paid for the tutorials, you paid for the service, and we've just heard a top solicitor say you've got a slam dunk case.
Absolutely, Alistair. I think that's exactly it. We're paying for a service that we are just not being provided with. And I think that what's quite upsetting about this is actually the sort of turn that the University and College Union have taken. I've sort of publicly criticised the union for sort of not being able to represent teachers and lecturers, and they've sort of hit back at me on Twitter as well. So I think the fact that they are so incredibly aggressive towards students just shows that they are not on our side. They do not represent the people that actually matter in this situation. And I have every sympathy with those teachers, those professors, especially those junior research staff that actually have received a pay cut. But actually, we've all received a pay cut. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and they are just absolutely hurting students the most.
How do you work out that key point that Shimon just made in my conversation, and that is that you've paid 6, 7, 8 grand a year, whatever it might be, for the course that you are pursuing, but you've only received, I don't know, 5% or 10% because of COVID and because of the strikes of what you'd paid for? Are the lawyers doing that for you and saying, right, you are entitled, we reckon, to 500 quid, 2 grand or whatever it might be? Who's doing that work?
I believe that because it's a class action case, sort of looking at it as a whole. But you're right; it's quite difficult to sort of look at that targetedly because every university sort of did things differently. A lot of my lecturers are part of the UCU union; some of them are not. So it meant that some of them did turn up to my lectures, and a lot of them didn't. And also, sort of during COVID, some of my lecturers just recorded lectures at home via Zoom. Some of them just used the recordings from 2019. So there's a lot of different variety around the way that these professors and lecturers and the junior research staff have sort of been able to use sort of the resources in front of them to be able to compensate for that. But when it comes to the strikes, I think that if a lecturer has not turned up to a lecture, then that means that we should be compensated for that individual lecture or class. I think the fact that they haven't shown up at all just shows that we paid for something that we physically did not receive. And I think that what I would like to really emphasize is how much stress this has really caused a lot of students. I'm in my 3rd year of university now. I go to the London School of Economics. So, during my A-levels, I spent all of my time in the library studying really hard to get into this university. And then in my 1st year of university, it was characterised by lockdowns, successive lockdowns where we had to be taught online. I had to stay at home and be taught online in my room. And then my 2nd and 3rd year has been characterised by strikes. So my university experience has not been the same as it has been previously. And I'm paying £9,250 a year for it.
Yeah, a lot of money. And as I say, you've become more consumeristic, as Charles Clarke predicted, and quite right too. Reem Ibrahim, thank you very much indeed for fitting us into your busy weekend. 60,000, they reckon now, like Reem, are saying we're not getting what we paid for and we want our fay crack of the whip. And as the solicitor just said to us, they've got every chance of success. So if that affects you out there, whether you be a lecturer, whether you be an undergraduate or postgraduate, do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.co.uk or do it on social media. I think it's a lively issue and one that many people out there are clearly honked off about because they've parted with their big amount of money and simply not getting what they have paid for.